think what I'm excited about is the brands that are able to reframe sustainability as everybody wins. The mistake the industry has often made is to frame it as a compromise. The messaging can't be one of compromise, it can't be one of sacrifice. It has to be a positive, optimistic view of the world.
Welcome to the Future in Sound podcast. I'm your host, Jen Wilson. This is a podcast where we discuss people, planet, and profit. In each episode, we'll learn from world-leading experts who can help us see the future we want and our role in it. This is episode 44. Everyone wins. Max Ottignon is the co-founder of Ragged Edge, a branding agency based in London, both clients around the world. It's an agency that refuses to settle for average and has recently celebrated its 18th birthday. Max, welcome to the Future in Sound podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with a bit of your background, Max? Can you tell us a bit about what led you to co-found Ragged Edge?
Yeah. So when I started my career back in the early 2000s, I was working for an ad agency, and I entered thinking that I was going to join this sort of incredibly glamorous, incredibly creative environment. And it couldn't have been more opposite. Like, it was very bureaucratic, it was slow. I wasn't even allowed to talk to the creative people who were on another floor. And that kind of put me off. And I ended up leaving with no job to go to, which was probably pretty stupid, but gives you a sense of how desperate I was to get out of there. And everything I've done since has been like a reaction to that. And so I still felt like I had something to contribute in the creative industry, but it felt to me that advertising, which is all about like campaigns and communication, was kind of nothing without clarity about the underlying brand. So a clear idea of what the business was for, and what the point of it was, and how you're going to tell that story. And then also trying to create an agency that was a nice place to work, and was fulfilling and rewarding, and was based on like delivering creative excellence rather than just like efficiency, which is what the sort of big network agencies tended to do.
Right. I really hear that, focusing on what businesses are for and the point of businesses is at the core of what you stood to create. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like advertising, if you're not clear on that stuff, advertising can be really short term and really empty, and thus ineffective in the long term. Whereas I think what really excited me with brand was you can help companies, and particularly like founders, really clarify what they're trying to do, and you can make an impact not just on what the brand looks like, but on the whole business, like internally in terms of culture, in terms of product development, and then in terms of how it frames what it's trying to do to the outside world.
And Ragged Edge talks about building brands that challenge the status quo. And I'm really interested, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I think, again, something I learned in my short-lived advertising career is that most people don't care about brands. Most brands, most advertising, most communication gets ignored. And even if it gets noticed, it probably gets forgotten pretty quickly. So if you're going to create a brand that people notice, and brands that get noticed tend to get remembered, and brands that get remembered tend to get chosen. So like, first thing you have to do is get noticed. To do that, you have to figure out a way to show up in a way that's different to everybody else. So essentially you have to stand out. And in order to do that, you have to make decisions that might feel a little bit scary, a little bit counterintuitive sometimes. But if they're made for the right reasons and executed in the right way, can be incredibly effective. And most really strong brands have at some point in their lifespan made those difficult decisions. And so the whole point of Ragged Edge is to help businesses do that in a way that's really strategic and really effective.
Sounds like there's a bit of a therapist slash branding agency in your work, Max,
There is a lot of that, yes.
helping your clients to understand their fears and maybe overcome them with a bit of bravery.
That's it. Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, and just obviously Rico being quite focused on sustainability and ethics, hearing about being noticed and remembered and ultimately chosen, but with a long-term strategy. I'm just wondering, when you help clients to navigate this kind of thinking, how does that tie into sustainability and ethics?
Good question. And obviously, it very much depends on the brand and the organization. I think we generally are looking for businesses that are looking to drive some sort of change in the world. And we like companies that are doing that for good reason, for positive reasons. And I think one of the best experiences I've had at Ragged Edge, and one of the ones that really sort of helped launch us as a business, particularly amongst the sort of fast growth like startup community in the earlier days, was working with clean energy companies, so Bulb, which had a bit of a notorious end, so the consumer energy startup. But what was amazing about that was learning how to frame a proposition that had sustainability at the heart. So the whole point of Bulb was they were trying to deliver clean energy and get people using clean energy at scale. The way to do that was they needed to sort of break into the big six of the energy companies. And I think at the time, the traditional way of doing that would be to really go big on their green credentials. And like you could imagine a world in which, you know, everything they said was about going green and that you could imagine that the brand color would be green and the whole messaging would be really focused on that. But I think what they were smart enough to realize, and also we were part of at the time, was that was never going to be more than a niche play. And it would attract people that are really, already wanted to be more sustainable, but their vision was much bigger than that. And I think lots of the sort of companies that are really going to make a difference in terms of climate tech and sustainability need to go beyond those kind of early adopters. And so what Bulb did really cleverly was they used the clean energy and the sustainability as a proof point, but the main message was just as much about simplicity and saving money. And the overarching tone and idea of the brand, we had this idea that drove everything was positive energy. And so it was just this in this sort of category where, people like British Gas and Npower and people like that are just like relentlessly like negative, boring, almost like a tax, behave as almost like a tax. Like we managed to reframe Bulb as this like force of positivity. And as I say, there was it didn't end particularly well for sort of reasons that were largely out of their control. But in the time between them founding, they were the fastest growing, regularly the fastest growing company in Europe, and certainly the fastest growing consumer energy brand. And they did it not just by focusing on sustainability, but that sustainability was sort of everywhere, but kind of beneath the surface.
It's really interesting to hear that story because I think what we're seeing at the moment, Rico working with private equity investors who have seen the zeitgeist shift to a certain extent on sustainability. So going from, sustainability is at the core of everything we do to almost this green hushing phenomenon where investors and in some cases portfolio companies that are operating, more heavily in North America or the United States are doing decarbonization work, but not really speaking about it. And one of the things that's really interesting about the example that you just shared is that sustainability wasn't the whole focus of the message. It was part of it, but really staying focused on saving customers money had to be integral to the message. And I'm just wondering if you have any, comments, given that a lot of our clients are navigating this almost black and white phenomena of we talk about it or we don't. Is there a middle way that can help to increase competitive advantage, get noticed, but maybe not choose sides necessarily?
that's a real challenge at the moment, isn't it? And particularly because so much of this stuff has become so politicized as well, and like ludicrously politicized. And so I think most people, if you ask them, like they want to be able to make a difference, and they want to be able to make choices that are good for the environment. But most people, or at least the majority of people, care about the environment, are concerned about climate challenges, and you want to make a difference. But on a day-to-day basis, most people are short-term and selfish. And when you actually look at their choices, they make, certainly on a day-to-day basis, they tend to, be focused on, is this going to make my life easier? Is it going to make my life better in the short term? Will it save me money? Is it better than the comparatively priced products over there, like regardless of green credentials or sustainability credentials? So you kind of have to win that argument first, and you have to present a better solution to the consumer. And then you can use the sustainability stuff as a reason to believe, and as something that gives that credibility and that gives it that additional weight. I think relying on sustainability as the main message can sometimes limit things, because people will often, if you're relying on that as your primary message, people might perceive that as, well, I'm going to have to make a compromise elsewhere.
Mm.
And so I think that is probably at the challenge of so much of the messaging around sustainability, isn't it? Is it's often been around compromise,
Hmm.
and people don't like to compromise.
Right. And when you are talking to clients, say, or let's imagine a scenario. You're talking to a client. A secondary message is sustainability related, but the core message is, we're going to improve your cybersecurity, or and we're going to do it with less energy, or we're going to, you can imagine this primary and secondary message. And they're a little tentative about the secondary message. And they sort of, well, there's all this noise and these headlines, and, governments aren't as much a fan of sustainability these days. Like, what would you say to that executive who's making the call of how to communicate? They've communicated sustainability in the past. They're now sort of wondering, should we continue with this? Like, how would you coach a client who's in that situation?
It's a great question. What we've always believed, and all the research that I've ever done and been exposed to in branding, is that you have to focus on what makes you different, because that's the thing that's going to get you noticed and remembered. And so if the sustainability part of your products and your offer is something that can help differentiate you, that's going to be a huge advantage, even if it may potentially, if framed in the wrong way, like alienate a portion of people. It's also going to help you get noticed by the right people. But I think it's how you frame it, and how you position it, and obviously making that the headline, and shouting about it, and becoming a brand that is about sustainability carries with it certain subtext. And at the moment, I can understand, I can kind of understand why people might shy away from that. But if it is as a credible reason to believe, then I think it kind of makes that a bit harder to argue against, doesn't it?
Hey, it's Jen. I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know a bit about Rico and what we do. We're a tech-enabled advisory firm that helps private market investors and companies measure sustainability metrics using our software platform. We also help you to set targets and focus your efforts on sustainability areas that really matter for your business. And finally, we help clients to translate all of this work into your core value creation strategy or your business model. Check us out at re.co.com to get in touch. All right, now back to our conversation. We can't have this conversation without bringing in our very own creative director, Harriet Richardson, the woman behind naming Rico, the woman who does all of our branding and makes us, personally, I'm a bit biased, so I think makes us look fantastic. Harriet is joining me to help guide this conversation. Can I hand it over to you, Harriet? I'm really interested to, get Max's point of view on the future and how we think about the future in branding.
Yes, I'm bursting. There's so many I have, and I think it's been so insightful already, because I love how you talk about being realistic in what people are going to listen to and identify with, over sort of, yes, you can have this like beautiful message, but if something's cheaper or something's more convenient, they're probably going to do that. And I find the fact that you're sort of based in realism really refreshing. I wonder, basically, my question is how, and I know that's a big one, but I obviously have experience in working with clients and in branding, and I just wonder if you'd be kind enough to share a little bit more about how you approach future proofing a brand, not just visually, but socially and environmentally too. Sorry, I know that's quite a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? How do we future proof it? Businesses and products are complex, but people respond to simplicity. And so what we are always looking to do is distill complexity into a really like simple, clear, single-minded idea, and then bring that to life in the brand in a way that has got flex and nuance. So every brand has to work across loads and loads of different channels, and so you need to optimize the brand to work across um, things like comms and campaigns through to more like performance messaging, through to how do you speak to investors, to how do you speak to internal like employees and things like that. So, but also businesses change, particularly growth businesses, and particularly in this sort of sector that we're talking about, change very quickly. And so you have to be thinking about the future and what you want to achieve, and that you need to build something that's going to be true to that future goal as much as it is to right now. And I think again in this sort of space, the other thing that's changing very quickly is culture and technology as well. So you have to be really aware of where you believe this is going to go, and be thinking about the future as much as you are about the present. That discipline is the whole game, and it's about like how can we create something and then really commit to it. And basically, brand. We always say that like brand is really a commitment,
Yeah.
and you have to really believe it in your hearts because you're going to have to live it over time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And one of the biggest learnings I had when I started in design was clients often, I suppose, think that you're getting just a logo or just a color palette, or, like they just want the sort of brand guidelines. But it's so much more emotional than that. I think it's so much more to do with longevity and, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years, and will it last? And I think in my opinion, good design is, timeless. And what that means, I suppose, with the rise, like you said, of AI and culture change, and it's so fast, I think it's a really interesting space to be in. But I think Ragged Edge seem to be at the front of that, so it's very exciting. And I wonder as well about, and I know we've spoken about this, offline when we met, but I wonder what your opinion is of the role that designers play, I suppose, in responsibility to creating sustainable design and into guiding clients into those decisions. Because I suppose, there's really only so much we can do as, you are being sort of almost employed, I suppose, by the client to a degree. So what sort of responsibility do you feel personally and as a brand to, help guide projects into a more sustainable space?
It is hard, isn't it? And it's easy to be idealistic about this stuff until you get confronted with the reality. And as an agency or as a freelancer or somebody working for a branding company or in a bigger company, you do have to work with the reality, not the way that you wish the world was. I think we like at Ragged Edge, just because we've been around a bit and we've built a pretty good reputation, we're able to. I think the first decision comes in who you work with, and we are able and are very, very intentional about like choosing clients. And one of the main criteria for that is, are they talking the talk or are they walking the walk? And for a brand, like before you even get into like the ethical nature of it, for a brand to be effective, there needs to be some substance to it. It can't just be bullshit. And so we're always looking for that. And of course, for us, it's about, we want to work with people that most people in this space anyway, want to do, which is you want to work for people that are going to create some sort of positive outcome for the world. Once you find those people, it's much easier because you're aligned. And so the real challenge, and I think it's often unwinnable, sadly, is when you're working for somebody who doesn't believe in those things. Like as a designer, you're only going to be able to have a limited impact on those people. Is the sad fact of it, I think. And what often I believe ends up happening is you might have an impact in that you can change the way they communicate, but not the way they behave.
Right. And do you think you can tell quite quickly when you meet someone whether or not what's your meter like when you meet?
I think my bullshit radar's got pretty decent over that. I've done this for a while now.
It's trusting your gut, isn't it? I think we can apply that to every facet of life.
I also think that there's something here about purpose makes branding so much more clear and durable. It's really interesting to listen to this, and Harriet, great questions. Max, I think that we have seen some flip-flops on branding. As I said earlier, sustainability is the most important thing. Now we're not talking about it. There's something here about if it truly is a purpose that's embedded in the organization, then you're more likely to have a durable brand that sort of has buy-in from across the organization. Yes, you'll change the way you communicate to a certain extent, but flip-flopping will be more difficult if you're dealing with a company that sort of has this clear purpose that is about organizing how they operate, not just a tagline or something that's, pasted on the wall of corporate.
Yeah. And I think what we've certainly seen in the past decade is all sorts of a tremendous amount of cynicism, and jumping on bandwagons to exploit the thing that is popular now. And there was a point at which that was sustainability, wasn't there? And then obviously, particularly in the US, there was a bit of a backlash to that. For me, and what was most disappointing was all the tech CEOs just like turning on a dime, and just like the breathtaking cynicism of that. But those companies never believed it,
Yeah.
and it was always performative.
Hmm.
And it was always something they did because they felt like they had to, whether that was to retain the best, to get the best talent, or to convince consumers, or get the right press, or whatever. But the companies that are really walking the walk, it comes through in everything they do, and it starts right at the top. And to me, that's always the real difference.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about the last decade with that lens. And that brings me to ask, if you could sort of see any shift happen in the next 5 or 10 years in branding and the branding industry around sustainability and responsibility, what would you like that to be?
I think what I'm excited about is the brands that are able to reframe sustainability as everybody wins. And I think the mistake the industry has often made, is to frame it as a compromise. We've been working recently with this really inspiring company out in the US called Palmetto, which is a consumer clean tech company. And one of the things they do is like help consumers like install like solar. And we had some amazing conversations with them. And the CEO, his point of view was, I've been working in this industry for a long, long time. The messaging doesn't work. The messaging of compromise doesn't work. We have to do something fundamentally different here if we're going to get people to change behaviors. And for him, and for this brand, Palmetto, like the idea was, you can have it all. And actually, like, clean energy means you don't have to make a compromise. It will end up saving you money. It will mean you can, plug in all of your devices at once, and it won't cost the earth in terms of financially, or in terms of impact on the environment. And so, just completely flipping that message into one of abundance, into one of positivity, giving people permission to have everything. We built the whole brand on that, in this case in Palmetto. But I think that's something that I think the whole industry should be doing, and trying to frame everything to do with sustainability into a win-win-win for everybody. And if we can find clever ways of doing that as an industry, I think we'll be in a really good place. It can't be one of compromise. It can't be one of sacrifice. It has to be a positive, optimistic view of the world.
It's amazing when you say it like that, actually, because I just can't believe that we've ever thought of it as a massive sacrifice to live in it's a world that's more sustainable and we can, have our cake and eat it. I think it's completely possible from, even the innovation we've seen in the last like 5 or 10 years. And it's so wonderful to know that branding is, grounded in positivity. Why should it not be?
I think that positivity, and I think also just honesty where there are trade-offs. Like, I mean, being really positive and win-win-win, like where we can, and then also making sure that we're not saying that it's a win-win-win when it's not, right?
Yeah.
There are limitations for sure, Max. Like, you're not saying that there's no like carbon emissions growing with AI, or do you know, it's more just the focus would be, we're looking to have the lowest carbon AI service.
Yeah.
And here's what we're doing. Like, here's the positive side kind of thing, because you need AI to run your business or whatever. It's sort of focusing where there are win-wins.
Yes.
And obviously strategies need to acknowledge trade-offs, but that's not what we lead with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And obviously, this isn't about glossing over negatives, but in order to get people to change behaviors, it is really hard to do that if you're asking them to make compromises. And we've seen that like time and time again for, for everything, like small things like recycling, like how hard it is to, make that work. You can't get, it's really hard to get people to change behaviors if you're asking them to make compromises. So brands and businesses have to figure out ways where it isn't a compromise. And certainly, technology is, at least in lots of different ways, and I appreciate, AI is in some respects potentially not doing that, but lots of technology is. And I think it's just a lot of it is about framing.
Yeah, completely. I have one more question, and I've been so excited to get to this one because it is my. Are there any particular books that you've read that have shaped your thinking in regards to creativity, sustainability, romantic, fiction, whatever you want?
The books that I really enjoy, like we work a lot in tech, and so I'm always the books that I really enjoy are the ones that like shine a light on the decisions that are really being made there. And there were like a lot of like inside accounts, but there were like WeWork and Uber and things like that. That book's super pumped. I've really enjoyed, because I think it exposes the cynicism
Yeah.
at the heart of this stuff and what we're up against, and also the haphazardness with which so many of these decisions are made. There's what's it called? The one that there's one that I'm reading at the moment, which is God, I've forgotten the name of it, about the story about where I used to work. I can't remember the actual title. It's by the somebody that used to work at Facebook. Careless People, it's called, and it is fantastic because it just shows you what we're up against, and it shows that kind of level of cynicism at the heart of tech. But it also, to me, shows what the opportunity is as well, which is the opposite of that. And I find that, both quite terrifying, but also quite inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, what terrified me about that book was, I mean, obviously so many parts of it, and it's like as terrible as you imagine, and then double it. But I thought at the core of, you always hope that at the core of these massive companies, there's some sort of professionalism,
Yes.
and to him, it isn't that, and it is just, like a frat house of, boys running around doing whatever they want. I think that's the most terrifying thing about that book.
It really is. And that is, I have had that experience with, big tech generally. But what is also interesting is like it's kind of just there isn't a plan. And I think what that means is there is an opportunity to help businesses like that form a plan. And when you can do that and really cut through, and I'm not saying we've done it, I don't think on the scale of like Facebook or Meta, but when we have done that with businesses and help businesses like figure out, okay, this is the point of this business, this is what we really can change, this is how we can make an impact. It's very fulfilling and very rewarding, and hopefully like has a net positive for humanity.
Yeah, a real takeaway for me, Max, is the importance of, purpose and developing a strong brand so that we're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
The need for bravery, that actually it's so easy to follow the herd, but to have a strong brand, you need to really point out what's different and be different. And that requires a certain amount of authenticity and bravery. And then finally, this piece around, there really is an opportunity to look for how can our business have an offering where everybody wins. And if we have this view of like we're walking the walk and talking the talk, then it's sort of a purpose-led everybody wins. So really appreciate the insights you've shared with us, Max. I don't know, Harriet, if you had any other reflections.
It's been an inspiring conversation, and I'm looking forward to the Ragged Edge Meta collab in the future. But thank you, Max. This has been really, really insightful.
Thank you for joining us, Max.
Thanks for having me.
The Future in Sound podcast is written and hosted by Jenn Wilson and produced by Chris Attaway. This podcast is brought to you by Rico, a tech-powered advisory company helping private market investors pursue sustainability objectives and value creation in tandem. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to tell a friend about it. And if you have a moment to rate us in your podcast app, we'd really appreciate it. Until next time, thanks for listening.